going to do some kind of odd stuff. We're going to jump around a little bit. Well, not literally jump around, but we're going to do some stuff that is a little out of order. So we're going to finish up chapter 9 today, dealing with some more problems with the French, and we'll back up a little bit to talk about sort of where those problems begin. And then we'll talk about the first real election in 1796 after George Washington decides to leave. I don't think we'll get to this election of 1800 today, but we'll finish chapter 9. The election of 1800 is actually the beginning of chapter 10. That's why I'm hesitant to say we'll start that. With the limited days that we have left, my goal is to kind of finish 9, which will be today, hopefully finish 10, but I like to test 9, 10, and 11 together. I don't think we'll get through 11, and I'm not sure we can finish 10, so we'll go as far as we can. But today, to finish 9 requires maybe a little bit over half the class period, and then I'm going to give you a worksheet that is actually for chapter 12. We can jump out of order a little bit. It skips to a completely different president, and it has a different topic, but it doesn't mesh with 9, 10, and 11 very well, and 12 is a one worksheet chapter. It's 10 questions in a worksheet. You finish it, then we'll have about a 20-minute discussion on it, and that's it for chapter 12. So when we finish the quarter, we'll be mostly done with 10, I think, probably halfway done with 10. We'll come back after Christmas break, we'll finish 10, we'll do 11, we'll take a test, and then we start 13 because we'll be done with 12. So I know that's a lot of jumping around, kind of some weird stuff, but timing is sort of critical for us to get everything done that I need to get done when I need to get it done. And 12 is one of those chapters that contains some pretty important stuff. It has a lot to do with like Indian removal, but we can condense or consolidate that down because we also talk about Indian removal in a lot of other chapters. So that's why we're doing what we're doing today. Probably half the people first block got that worksheet done before the end of class. Last block, first block this morning. So I'm also recording so that the Thursday students have this lesson, hopefully. Well, it's frozen, so I can't really tell if we're recording. But I've been having issues with QuickTime not recording the whole thing. It likes to shut off. But I just went into the trash on my computer. And we're still recording it. And there were 17,000 things in the trash. So I think maybe my computer was just kind of clogged up with extra stuff. The other thing I want to be very, very clear on, check your grades at least sometime in the next day or so. If it says you're missing something, then you either haven't turned it in or I haven't graded it yet. And either of those things need to be remedied. So if there's like a chapter 8 test and you took it after everyone else because you were gone, and I just haven't graded it yet, a quick email would help me. Mr. Bellamy, would you please grade my Chapter 8 test, White, Block 2? Yes, I would love to grade your test. But everything that I'm aware of is in. Now, I've graded about 2/3 of the projects that you turned in the other day. Yeah, I don't think I've done your class yet. I think it's next in my pile, actually. So that'll go in as a 20-point summative assessment. So that should be coming in soon. And then the worksheet that you've got today, and then probably one more grade for the quarter sometime next week. Probably early next week since we now don't have school Friday. Someone made sense of things, right? So anyway, so keep track of all that stuff. And I know it gets towards this time of year, it gets tough because everyone's asking a lot of you to finish things up. And then throw in on top of that that we've had a lot of sickness and real sickness, like when not you're just home because you're tired and you have the sniffles, but when the flu kicks your rear end and you have to stay home. So all those things combined sort of are making it difficult to stay caught up. It's in your hands to stay caught up. If you miss a day of my class, you need to come and see, what did I miss? What do I need to do to get caught up? And I'll be happy to help you with that. So take care of business for the next week and a half. We'll finish up the quarter. Everyone will be happy. Booyah. Yeehaw. Okay. Last thing we did, I think the other day, we were looking at these conflicts. Did we watch the video with the guillotining, the whacking, the whoosh? Okay, yeah. It kind of, I spent one year doing some research on the guillotine and the French Revolution, and boy, you can really get stuck in YouTube watching guillotine videos. Like, I didn't want to watch any videos of the real thing, and I'm not sure that it exists on YouTube, but there are videos of the real thing. Because like the video said, the French still used the guillotine, kind of in private, all the way into the 1970s, as a way to execute people. I think it'd be a really messy way to execute people. But there's a lot of interesting videos that show, people having reactions after their head is chopped off. That they smile, or they frown, or they wink, or something like that. So it kind of makes you wonder if there's a certain level of consciousness after death when your head is removed from your body. Is your brain still functioning momentarily? Did they feel pain? Did they know what was going on? Could they see? Anyway, there's no way for us to know those things, but it's one of those topics that if you go into YouTube and start looking, it just keeps going, and you could spend hours searching around. But the French Revolution was really a turning point in politics in Europe. Where do you think the French people got their inspiration to revolt or rebel against their own government? America. The French people watched America, and it sort of was a perfect scenario, or a horrific scenario for the French people, because they're going through a time where the cost of food goes up 66% and their wages go up 22%, which we know today is called inflation. And not just a little inflation, but a lot of inflation. And I know some of this is review, but every class sort of was at a different spot, so I'm fine with this. And it's economics, which is a weak spot, actually, in our standards when we look at what we teach in middle school. So understanding inflation is a difficult thing. But I think we went over this. Who is affected the most when we have inflation, especially really high inflation? Rich people or poor people? Poor people are. When the cost of stuff goes up and your wages don't, the poor people are the most affected. Does Warren Buffett care if gas is $4 or $5 a gallon? He might care, but it doesn't affect his daily life. Does $5 a gallon gas, which obviously we don't have, but does that affect your daily life? My wife drives to Omaha every day. $5 gas would be really bad for our budget. The fact that we're under $3 today is like, woohoo! It's kind of exciting that we're paying less than $3 a gallon, when only a few months ago it was $3.50. So that's a lot of money, because my family drives a lot. I drive to school every day, and Taryn drives every day, and I pay for her gas, and Tannen drives a couple of days a week. So yeah, when gas is expensive, it has a big impact on me, because my wages don't go up very frequently, very much. Certainly not that 8 to 9% that has been inflation for most of the last 2 years. About 20 months worth of high inflation. But that 8% is nowhere near the 63% or 66% that the French were going through. So they decided to get rid of their king. The first part of the French Revolution was the king and his men capturing partisans. There were some 300,000 people around Paris that were arrested for protesting against the king, and some 17,000 of them were beheaded. Then those partisans eventually get control, and they behead the king and the queen. They take care of that situation and all of the king's men, and we get rid of the monarchy, or they get rid of the monarchy in France. So things change rapidly because the people are upset and because the people are angry. But here's also where we see a major difference between our country and their country, at least while they had a king. When the people were protesting and upset with the government, the king's response was to have them arrested and, in some instances, guillotined. If you protest because you don't think that the government is doing what it should be doing, in America today, what's the response from the government to your protest? As long as it stays peaceful, you're allowed to do that. What protects your right to protest? The First Amendment. So that Bill of Rights that we put in all of a sudden is looking like a pretty smart idea. We can protest as long as you're on public property, not private property, and as long as it's a peaceful protest. Freedom of speech protects your right to do that. The First Amendment in the Constitution says we will not be arrested for peaceful protest. We certainly won't be guillotined for peaceful protest. Now, that changes when you begin to take somebody else's rights away. So you can say pretty much whatever you want. Is it against the law for you to say, I think our president is a ding-dong? Nope. It is only against the law if you begin to take his rights away or you threaten to take his rights away. Like you can't threaten to kill an official. It's a terroristic threat. Or if you're protesting Mr. Bellamy because he's a horrible teacher, you can do that as long as you stay. You can go to my house with picket signs and you can shout, Mr. Bellamy's a horrible teacher. First of all, go ahead. Nobody's going to hear you because I live in the middle of nowhere, so it's not going to be a very productive protest. But as soon as you step on my property, then I can have you arrested for trespassing. So your rights do end when you begin to take my rights away, and I do have a right to my privacy and my property. But if you stay on the county road, well, you probably get hit by a car, or my dog might come and bite you. But you have the right to do that. What about a sidewalk in town? What if I lived in town and you were protesting Mr. Bellamy, the hateful that he is? Can you do that on a sidewalk? Who owns the sidewalk? The town, the public. Even though it runs right across your property, that's city property. What happens as soon as you step into my lawn? Then you're trespassing, you're breaking the law. So there's a difference there. The street is owned by the city. The sidewalk is owned by the city. As long as you stay on the sidewalk, you're not breaking any laws. As long as you're not threatening me. So we see that our Bill of Rights, that our amendments, that our rights in this country work out really well for us. We will not have a French Revolution style whacking of people in America. And at the same time, France declares war on the British, which really ties us up in a knot because the French, they're our oldest ally. They were the first country that recognized America's independence. They were the most helpful when it came to fighting for our independence. So it's likely that the French are going to come to America and say, hey, remember a few years ago when we helped you out? You should help us out. And the British, we're really still not buddies with the British. In fact, they're still hanging out in areas where they're annoying to us. In a minute, we'll see that they're supposed to be leaving, but they kind of leave. We're going to have another war with the British here pretty soon. But the British, they're our biggest trading partner, so we can't really afford to take them off. We could say the same thing maybe about China today. China's our biggest trading partner. We buy a lot of stuff from China. We could use tariffs and taxes as a tool to fight the Chinese or to get them to listen to our demands, but it would also be painful to us if we stop buying their stuff. So we don't really want to be an enemy with China because we rely on their cheap stuff. Can we replace it? Yes, but it would take some time. We have issues this summer. You probably heard stories about the price of cars going way up because of some little teeny tiny microchip that's manufactured in China. And China's kind of closed down still over COVID. So we're having trouble getting stuff from China to America. As a result, we've started to realize that some of that stuff needs to be manufactured here where we can control it. So things are always changing. But the British want us on their side because we're trading partners. The French want us, and George Washington says, no, we're not getting involved. So we declare our neutrality. Neutrality means we're not picking sides, which makes both of them angry with us. Both sides think we should have joined them. So this is a tough situation for the United States, but we don't have the military power. We don't have the money to go fight a war that's not our war across the globe. It would have taken a tremendous amount of resources for us to help either the French or the British. And in doing so, we would have endangered our relationship with both countries. So the United States has all of these things that we've got to deal with. We do have some positives, and this is a positive and a negative at the same time. We get together, John Jay gets together with the British, and he gets the British to sign a treaty with us, giving us the Ohio Valley, which was ours anyway, but they kind of leave. So remember, they were hanging out there in that Northwest Territory, the area on that map a couple of weeks ago that was black, where the land ordinance divided the land up. So Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. That's the Northwest Territory. They left the Ohio Valley, supposedly. And they said that we would have free trade and peace. And that lasts for almost 10 years. So it's a great relief that we don't have to worry, at least for a while, about the British being an enemy of the United States. That George Washington has fended that off. What country do you suppose it angers that we're signing treaties with the British? The French. They don't like the fact that we're doing treaties with the British while they're at war with the British. So it is kind of the situation, and we face this all the time today, but if we're friends with one country, it ticks off another country. So we have to kind of be careful who our friends are and who our enemies are. It's sort of like if you have a best friend and your best friend counts on you to always be there, and one day you decide you're going to go and have a sleepover at a different friend's house. Your best friend might be jealous of that. That's what's going on here. We also have a treaty with the Spanish that now allows us to use the Mississippi River and the Port of New Orleans. So all of a sudden, that opens up easier settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains because now we can trade using those rivers. This is great. Pinckney's Treaty opens up a lot of stuff for us. And it eases tensions in the western states. The frontier, now we don't have to worry so much about the French or the Spanish or the British. What is our only real concern on the frontier, or who is our only real concern on the frontier? Native Americans, Indians. So there's less tension, but the tension still exists. And it really opens up for us, the Pinckney's Treaty, this big brown blob. The Spanish cede that to us in Pinckney's Treaty. Did the Spanish need it? No, there are almost no Spanish there. In fact, if you look at this map, they give us the big brown blob. The gray part is Spanish Louisiana territory. Wait a minute, Mr. Bellamy. I know a little bit about Lewis and Clark and the Louisiana Purchase. Maybe some of you do. Who did we purchase Louisiana territory from? Was it the Spanish? It was the French. But on here, it's Spanish territory. So something's got to change between now and later. But we get all this. This also has an impact. Everything that happens 50 years earlier has an impact on 50 years later. What do you think by opening this up happens to the need for slaves in America? It's going to increase dramatically because this area in the South relies heavily on two predominant crops, cotton and tobacco. Cotton and tobacco are both very labor intensive, and any crop that's labor intensive means manpower. And because it's in the southern states, the amount of time that you have to grow that crop is nearly 365 days. So in some parts of those southern states, it never freezes. So when you harvest the crop, what do you do the next day? Plant a new one, plow the fields and plant another crop. So it's not like Nebraska where we've harvested our crop and the corn is in the bin. Now we got to wait until the ground thaws out in April before we can get the ground ready to plant another crop. It doesn't do you any good to go plant corn right now because it's just going to freeze and then it's going to rot in the ground when it starts to rain. So it's different. But that land opens it up. So we've got Spanish Florida and we've got Spanish Louisiana, but America is starting to kind of come together. And we're also kind of starting to envision this future for America. It's called Manifest Destiny, which is an upcoming chapter, where we start to believe that it's our destiny. What's destiny mean, by the way? Say what's destiny? A journey that you go on, okay? Any other answers? It's meant to happen. It's gonna be. You're not wrong. It is a journey. It's our destiny that we're gonna go on this journey. And it's our destiny. It's our God-given right to settle from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. We're only halfway there looking at that map on the previous slide. Well, we're only to the Mississippi River. But Americans at this point start to think, we should have the whole thing before we even know what the whole thing is or how big the whole thing is. Nobody really knows. That's why in 1803, Lewis and Clark are going to go on that expedition. And when they go on that expedition, don't tell anyone, they were actually sent to trespass. It wasn't American territory yet. We were sneaking out there to see what was there. Now, it just so happened that by the time Lewis and Clark actually went, we did own Louisiana territory. But that wasn't initially supposed to be that way. It's like, sneak out there and see what's there and see how much it's worth and see how big it is and see what resources are there. Yay! That was the plan. Anyway, cede is to give up, like the land in the picture before. That big brown blob was ceded to us by the Spanish, and neutral is not taking sides. George Washington chose to keep us neutral. Now, G-Dub decides after 2 terms in office to retire. He thinks 2 terms is enough for any one man. Throw in on top of that, if you look at the guy's history, he's either been fighting the French and Indian War or fighting against the British for American independence or spending time on the Continental Congress or the Constitutional Convention or acting as President of the United States. I think it's fair to say that George Washington gave enough to this country. And he's kind of old, and most people, when they get old, look forward to retiring or doing something that they enjoy doing. He just wants to go back to Mount Vernon. You're going to D.C. with me in May. We're going to go there. He wants to go back to his house and do his farming, which is what his passion was, and just relax with his wife, Martha. And sit on his back porch and enjoy the beautiful weather. And when we go to Mount Vernon, if we get an opportunity to sit on his back porch, at least if you're the kind of person that likes to relax a little and sometimes sit still and just enjoy life, you'll see why George Washington wanted to go home. His back porch is really cool. Be like, this would be nice to sit out here on an evening and just watch the river flow by, maybe have a fire pit and some s'mores. It's a beautiful place. But he's ready to go home. He's done, and he deserves to be done, even though Americans are saying, George, stick around for one more term. We need you. George is like, come on, guys, let me go. And everyone's like, yeah, okay. So when he leaves, he writes a 32-page letter giving advice as to what should happen in the future. Now, it's not uncommon. In fact, it's tradition. It's precedent that was set by George Washington that every time a president leaves office, they leave a note for the incoming president. Now, it's secret. It's never told to us exactly what was in it. They could, and I don't know necessarily if that tradition or that precedent continued. Like when President Obama left office, you think President Obama was a big fan of Donald Trump? Nope. He left a note for Donald Trump. Now, exactly what that note said, probably Donald Trump is the only person that really knows. But it was probably something like, hey, good luck with the new job. Try not to screw things up too much. That's the note that I would leave, especially to someone that I didn't care for very much. If it was my hand-picked predecessor, the guy that's coming right after me, and I picked him, I'd be like, oh, great, I'm glad. The keys are here. The best toilet in the White House is down the hall and to your left. And if you want to hide from the Secret Service, it's kind of funny. Here's a good spot. That's the kind of stuff I would put in the note if it was someone I liked. Did Trump leave a note for Biden? Nobody's ever said yes or no to that. But they're supposed to kind of just, hey, good luck, America. You know, that's the kind of stuff that goes in there. But 32-page letter, and in his 32-page letter, he warns us really against 3 things. Don't form political parties. What we do in the very first election after, we formed political parties. Don't. We didn't listen to George Washington. We should have. He was worried the political parties would divide the country. Do they? Yeah. More so today than probably at most times in history. If you see yourself as a Republican, you're sort of kind of taught to believe that Democrats are horrible and evil and rotten and wrong. If you see yourself as a Democrat, you're sort of taught to believe that Republicans are horrible and evil and rotten and wrong. And that's wrong. George Washington would say it's okay to have differences of opinion, but respect each other's differences of opinion. If you're one political party or you fit into one political party, the other isn't necessarily wrong. They just have a different way of looking at things. We do it wrong today. We need to go back to George Washington's time and know that there is acceptable discourse. It is okay to not agree with something or someone. They're not necessarily wrong. They're just different. Maybe some of you think that it's a really great idea to have long hair. I might disagree with you on that. Fair that I disagree with you on that? Yes, it's fair because I can't grow hair, so I have to disagree with you on that. But am I angry or upset or dislike you because you have long hair? No. Though Seth did offer that if we put in a guillotine, we can test it on his hair. Didn't you offer that yesterday? I said something about that. We don't want to chop off anybody's head, but we could use it for a haircut. And if it works on Seth's, then we're going to chop off Brooks' braid. It would be a cool haircut device, unless you have really short hair like this, because then, yeah, that would be a little too tight, right?
Clean shave.
Yeah, very clean shave. How would you like that if your job was to polish and sharpen the blade on the guillotine? What a job, right? It's gory though, you know that. Want it nice and sharp. Don't have permanent alliances. An alliance means, look, I got your back and you got my back forever. Well, forever is kind of a sketchy thing because what happens if you change or I change? Will we always be friends? That's not very nice of you. Of course we're always going to be. Now, we might not be, though, because people change and friendships change. He was worried. George said it'll draw us into foreign wars. Did we follow his instructions? Have we been involved in foreign wars because of alliances? We currently are involved in an alliance with a whole bunch of countries called NATO. Stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And all of those countries promise to have each other's back. It's a very, very powerful alliance. If any one NATO country is attacked, it's considered an attack on all. So after 9/11, immediately the days following, we weren't exactly sure who attacked us. Might have been terrorists, might have been a country. There were a lot of question marks. So as soon as we were attacked on 9/11, within hours of that attack, there were countries in NATO that were calling George Bush and saying, hey, we're in, who do you need us to kill? And some of those countries in NATO don't really love us, but they want to be part of that organization or part of that alliance because they know that if they're attacked, they got Big Brother USA that will defend them. Do you think that alliance has also served a positive purpose? Do you think that some countries don't get attacked out of fear that it will trigger NATO? Yeah, it has stopped a lot of that kind of stuff. But it could also pull us into a conflict. So those alliances, you should understand why GW thought they were dangerous and scary, but they also have some value. Right now, do you think Ukraine wishes they were in NATO?
Yes.
Yeah. If Ukraine was in NATO, do you think Russia would have attacked them?
No.
Been pretty foolish to do so, right? Because that likely would have triggered World War III. Russia used to have its own version of NATO. It was called the Warsaw Pact. About the same. It's kind of dissolved and went away, but Russia still has allies too. And then, how about this one? Excuse me. Don't have excessive debt. Do you think George Washington would believe $32 trillion is excessive. I think so. $32 trillion is a lot of debt. That's America's debt, by the way. It's a lot. And it's getting bigger all the time. How do we pay off that debt?
Taxes.
Yeah, we don't. But how could we pay it off?
Taxes.
Taxes. But they would be the kind of taxes that would be so strenuous on us and on our economy. It would do some massive damage to the United States. So it's such a large debt that I'm not going to be able to pay it off, and you're not going to be able to pay it off, and your children aren't going to be able to pay it off. So every time we're accruing debt and that number gets bigger and bigger, we are harming our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, because they're going to be the ones that are going to have to figure out how to take care of this. My generation is creating more problems for your generation to try to solve. My parents' generation created the problems that we've got now. So you're either going to be a solution or a continuation of the problem. Not sure yet. Figure it out. Save us, please. Do better. Be better. So G-Dub leaves. Now, immediately as soon as he leaves, we form two political parties. The Federalists, led by Adams and Hamilton, your singing guy. And they believe in a stronger federal government, and they're strongest in New England, made up of merchants and manufacturers and the big cities. So if we were to look at the two current modern-day most powerful political parties, what are the modern-day two big political parties? Republican and Democrat. Which would the Federalists be the most similar-ish to? Big cities and strong, big federal government. Democrat is right. Somebody said Democrat, that is right. If we look at the Democratic Republicans, led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, they wanted more power within the states, and they were made up of more of rural people, and specifically farmers, which would be more similar to Republicans today. So there's some similarities and some differences, and we're even talking about joining the French or joining the British in warfare between these two political parties. So the middle and the southern states were more similar-ish to the Democratic Republicans. Two political parties. Right after the president told us, don't do it, it's a bad idea. We did it anyway. We're not very good at listening. We got someone like George Washington, who we all trust and who's kind of a smart guy. Maybe we should pay attention to them. Instead, we listen to all the doofuses. It's like Charlie Brown giving us all advice all the time, when we should be listening to Snoopy. Because Snoopy is the smart one, right? Not Snoop Dogg, Snoopy. I don't think Snoop Dogg is good for very much except Corona commercials on the beach. Isn't that Snoop Dogg? Is that the guy? Yeah. I don't know very much about the Snoop Dogg. Anyway, in the very first election, I'm sorry, guys. Adams defeats Jefferson, but it's close. So the country is divided right down the middle. 71 electoral votes to 68 electoral votes. Our elections are determined by electoral votes. I'll try to simplify this. Your electoral votes are based on the number of people that your state sends to Washington, D.C. to represent the state. So how many electoral votes does Nebraska have based on what we learned a week or so ago? 5. 3 for the House of Representatives and 2 for the Senate. Nebraska has 5. Now, listen to this. Today there are 50 states, of course, and 48 of those 50 states are winner-take-all states. So whoever gets the most votes in that state gets all of their electoral votes. If you get, let's say Hayden and I are running for president and we're campaigning in California, and Hayden gets 1 million votes and I get 999,999 votes. He got one more vote than me. He gets all 55 of California's electoral votes. Does anyone want to guess which states are freaks?
Nebraska and Maine.
Nebraska and Maine. I've already told you, anytime I ask that question, which state is a freak, it's probably Nebraska, with our unicameral and with the fact that we will divide our electoral votes. And that's a discussion for another day, but this is how we get 71 and 68. It's not that there were only 139 people voting, it's electoral votes. So it's close. Then we immediately have another problem. France knows that our Navy isn't strong enough to defend the country, so they start looting our ships. The French Navy pulls over American ships loaded with Mountain Dew and Pop-Tarts, and they steal all of the stuff. America is angry, so we send officials to France. We tell those officials, you get tell the French the what? Tell them they can't be looting our ships or we're going to have issues. But the French kind of laugh at us. So we send diplomats. We send 3 men to France to try to work out a deal. But before they can get to the leadership in France, Charles de Talleyrand, they have to confront these 3 French officials named X, Y, and Z. It's a code name. 3 French officials. And those 3 Frenchmen say, we won't even talk to you unless you pay us a bribe. So America is weak and we're getting pushed around. Now, really, really quick, let's do a contest. Who's fastest at telling me what were the real names of these 3 Frenchmen, X, Y, and Z? Google it. Go. I think you'll be surprised at the results. What do you got, Seth? Oh, I thought you had it. What do you got, John?
Pierre Bellamy was Y, Lucien Hotbell was Z, and Nicholas Hubbard was, oh no, Jean Pottinger was X.
I only care about one of those. You just said Pierre Bellamy was one. Yeah, that's weird. Frenchman named after me. My family's not from France, so wasn't me. But anyway, I thought that's kind of a funny answer. We'll just stick with X, Y, and Z because I don't want my name dragged into this. So I got a short video clip that explains the XYZ affair, but it has singing in it, so you might just burst into song while you're watching it.
Angry at U.S. neutrality in the British-French conflict, the French had attacked a number of American ships. It was a big problem for President John Adams.
That's John Adams.
American ships. What shall I do? I must send smart diplomats to negotiate with French Foreign Minister Charles Maurice de Talleyrand Pericourt. We are very smart diplomats. We want to negotiate so the my dream has come true. Surely Charles Whitney, John Marshall, and Elbridge Gerry will successfully negotiate. Well, what are you waiting for? Get to work. Consider all this protest. This is cool. You've been my diplomat. Here come the foreign minister's representatives. Those report to film as X, Y, and so you want us to leave your ships alone? Yes, we do. How much? I think pretty much. Enough to offer us a bribe. Moscow. France is a powerful country. You better pay. Rather fight an expensive war than pay you some stupid bribe. It's saying not 1 cent for tribute. You'll be sorry. When Americans got word of how disrespectfully they'd been treated by the French, many wanted to go to war. George Washington was ready to come out of retirement to leave the army. Adams, however, tried further negotiation, and this time, France treated America seriously. The XYZ affair, so named because that's how Americans referred to the French representatives who demanded a bribe, showed the world that the United States demanded to be treated with respect.
You'll be sorry. It gets stuck in my head and then I can't stop saying it over and over again. And you know that Judson's going to be singing that at lunch. I know.
it's a good song. So we avoid war, but we were close. Okay, two last things here for this chapter, I think. We passed something called the Alien Act. An alien is someone who's a non-citizen. And it says here that we could deport non-citizens. Deport means kick out. So if you're not a citizen of the United States and you break the law, you can be kicked out of America. Non-citizens. Can a citizen be forced to leave the country? No. So I'm a citizen. I think all of you are citizens, I'm fairly certain. So you can't be told that you have to leave. But we do have some people that go to school in your grade that are not citizens. Their families, if they broke the law, could be forced to leave. Do you have to be a citizen to stay? Nope. Not the way our laws are written. You do not. You have to have the government's permission if you're not a citizen. So as long as, I'm going to use Rodrigo as an example, so he's going to be listening to this, and he's like, oh, there's my name. As long as Rodrigo's parents do what they're supposed to do, and they follow the law, and they have permission from the government, they can stay here as long as they want. Can the government put them on a time limit? Yes. We can remove non-citizens anytime we want, especially if they break the law. The Sedition Act, this one's a little bit different. It outlaws stirring up rebellion against the government. Anybody got a problem with the Sedition Act? Hint, you should have a problem with the Sedition Act. So the question is, what is the problem with the Sedition Act? Seth? Huh. So the Bill of Rights gives me permission if I choose to stir up rebellion. As long as I'm not harming anybody or taking anybody's rights away. Can I protest our own government? First Amendment says yes, as long as it's a peaceful protest. So all of a sudden we already have a question as to the constitutionality or the power of the federal government to take away rights. And yes, this takes off a lot of people because the Bill of Rights says, the First Amendment says, I can do this. Now there are limits in the Constitution to how much sedition can exist. So me saying, I don't like our government, I think we should get a new government, we should have a dictatorship with me in charge. Me saying that, and me actually forcing myself into the White House with guns ablazing and forcing myself in as the dictator, well, that's two different things. But just the speech of it, the talk of it, isn't necessarily breaking the law and have First Amendment rights that protect that. So this takes off a lot of people. And it makes people think that maybe John Adams has too much power. It tests our government. Now, during times of war, sometimes Constitution is bent. Like, for instance, there's a due process clause in the Constitution that says if you're arrested, you have to be charged with a crime within a certain amount of time. During the American Civil War, Abraham Lincoln knew there were people that were against the war, that were harming the war effort. So he just had them arrested, put in jail, and not given a trial. Abraham Lincoln, on this day, was bending the Constitution to meet the needs. Or during World War II, we took thousands of Japanese Americans, citizens of Japanese descent, and we put them in prison camps because we were fearful that it looked like our enemy. We were fearful that they might be friendly to the Japanese, who were our enemy during World War II. We took away their constitutional rights. So sometimes during times of war, those rights are limited or flexed, I guess you could say. Was it right? Absolutely not. So alien is an immigrant that's not a citizen, and you don't have to be a citizen to live in America. You just have to have permission. So when you see on TV they talk about illegal immigrants, the ones that are coming across the border without permission, they can be removed. Alien Act allows that. They're not here with permission. They can be kicked out. And then sedition is stirring up rebellion against the government. So those are the two vocab terms. Okay. Once you get that done, sorry, excuse me. I'm going to give you all a worksheet. It says Jackson's policy toward Native Americans. This is a chapter 12 worksheet. So it is jumping ahead, it is jumping out of order. It's literally 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. Use those 4 paragraphs. There's a like 10 question assignment in Otis. Use those 4 paragraphs to answer those 10 questions. If you happen to get done before we go to lunch, I wouldn't mind having this back. It'll save me from making a whole bunch more copies. If you don't get it done, you can take it with you and you can do this as homework. But it shouldn't take you very long to do this, but take as much time as you need. So chapter 12 worksheet in Otis goes with this. So it's a drag and drop, fill in the blank worksheet. So get it done as quickly and productively as you can. Hold on, I'm gonna go and turn my recording off on my computer. I don't need to record passing out papers.